Welcome to the Business of Government Hour TV, a video companion to our flagship radio program. I'm Michael Keegan, your host. Each week, government executives and thought leaders join me for an informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. These individuals are truly changing the way government does business. What are GSA's strategic priorities? How is GSA making government more effective and efficient? I'll explore these questions and so much more with my guest, Emily Murphy, Administrator of the U.S. General Services Administration, GSA. My co-host from IBM is Lisa Mascolo. Take a look and take a listen. Download the entire interview at Podcast One, iTunes, and at businessofgovernment.org. So, Emily, would you briefly discuss the mission and continued evolution of the U.S. General Services Administration, GSA?
I'd be happy to. GSA's mission is to deliver value and savings in real estate, acquisition, technology, and other mission support services across the government. Our services really focus on ensuring our customer agencies can carry out their critical missions and that entities trying to do business with the government can do so as seamlessly as possible. I'm actually in a unique position to talk about how GSA has evolved because I've served there before. I spent a few years there in the Bush administration. And it's been really great to see how GSA has changed in the past 13 years. I've seen GSA really walk the walk. It's consolidated. It's consolidated in terms of space. So we went from having a campus in Crystal City, a campus in Willow Wood, down to having all of central office consolidated into one building. We're down to about 140 square feet per person. Wow. So when we talk about spatialization, we're really leading the charge on that. But we've also consolidated in terms of our functions. When I first worked at GSA, there was a federal supply service. There was a federal technology service. When I came back, there was a technology transformation service. We've consolidated all of those into a federal acquisition service. And we've consolidated our CIO functions, our CFO functions, our HR functions into a shared service model inside of GSA. Oh, okay. So really trying to lead there. It's also fun to see where we haven't changed. So the passion and the mission really have remained the same. And it's sort of fun to see that a couple of the things I implemented the first time I was there have survived. That's cool. Nice. So procurement management reviews and work on trying to actually make our regulations make sense, keep them up to date. So those processes still exist in GSA, and it was fun to see that they kept them all these years later.
So, you kind of hinted at FAS and the real estate. So I was wondering, with such an important mission at GSA, I'd like to get a sense of your operational footprint. So what are your core lines of business? How is GSA organized? What's your overall budget? How many folks work at GSA?
All right, so GSA has two main lines of business, and then we've got a variety of support offices around that. The first one's the Federal Acquisition Service. Federal Acquisition Service supports about $55 billion in acquisition across the government. We manage about a third of the government's fleet, which is about 200,000 vehicles. We have 3.3 million charge cards we manage for the government. And we dispose of about $1 billion in personal property each year. It also has the Technology Transformation Service in it, which is the Centers of Excellence and 18F, the Presidential Innovation Fellows. So we've got a lot of innovation there. The other main line of business is the Public Building Service. And the Public Building Service buys, builds, leases, and manages federal workspace. We currently have about 8,700 owned or leased facilities, and it's about 371 million square feet of rentable space, which means we've got about 500 owned buildings that are historic buildings, and then the rest of it sort of breaks down about 50-50 with owned and leased space. We've also got our Office of Government-Wide Policy that does a lot of cross-government support, technology transformation work. It does travel regulations, the federal acquisition regulations, management regulations, and 11 staff offices that also are CIO or CFO folks along those lines. All total, we're approaching about 12,000 employees at GSA, and our budget last year was somewhere around $26 billion, which, to put into context, Unlike most federal agencies, GSA doesn't receive a direct appropriation for most of our work. We're a fee-for-service entity. So if you look at what we collect in our revenue each year, it's about $22 billion, which puts us more or less on the same footprint as a Starbucks or Southwest Airlines.
Interesting. Given your portfolio and leadership position, what would you say are your top, say, 3 challenges or so, and how have you sought to address those challenges?
So if I were going to address 3 challenges, I'd say one of them is actually a great challenge to have. Agencies are relying on GSA more. Mm-hmm. We have more customers coming to us. This does pose a challenge, especially as we get to the end of the fiscal year, in a year where we had budgets plussed up. So agencies are trying to obligate funds by the end of the fiscal year, and GSA is trying to help them, whether on the federal acquisition side or the public building side. So trying to be there for our agency customers when they need us. The second challenge, I'd say, is the work we're taking on as a government-wide leader, whether it be through the government-wide reform plan or the president's management agenda. GSA is being asked to sort of increase the size and the scope of the work that we do. It's actually, it's sort of interesting. It really goes back to President Truman's vision for GSA of us being the mission support agency. But this administration has focused on that vision for GSA and is using us a lot more either in shared services or in helping with transactional processing, giving us a lot more responsibility across government. I'd say the third challenge, though, is really the incredible pace at which technology changes. So we help the government buy a lot of technology and helping them buy the right solutions that meet their needs now and in the future is one of the areas where GSA really focuses on delivering value.
Emily, you've positioned GSA as an integral resource to support an effective and efficient government for the American people. To that end, would you outline your strategic vision for GSA and briefly identify your core priorities, if you would?
So I have 4 priorities for GSA. As I mentioned, my first one is ethical leadership. My second one is reducing duplication, which is a lot of the work we do on shared services, contract vehicles, really trying to be there as that mission support office for other agencies. My third one is increasing competition, not just the number of vendors who bid on our contracts, but making sure we get a real competition of solutions and of ideas so that we're finding the right answer for our customer agencies and ultimately for taxpayers. And then finally, increasing transparency, making sure that we act in a way that we make our data available to help inform the decisions, to increase competition, and frankly to prove that that ethical leadership and that we're really living up to all those principles. I think those fit very nicely, though, into the 4 strategic goals that we've got for the agency. The first one is saving taxpayer money through better use of our federal real estate. As I said, it's 371 million square feet of rentable space, making sure that we manage that in a way that saves money for taxpayers long term. Secondly, establishing GSA as the premier provider of acquisition solutions across the government, making sure the contract vehicles we develop, that the solutions we come up with meet our customers' needs and attract the best that the private sector has to offer. Third, improving the way that agencies buy, build, and use technology. So helping them not just spend money on a solution that meets their needs today, but it's going to be outdated tomorrow, but helping them really work to find something that's going to transition with them and support them in building this government of the 21st century. And then the fourth one is designing and delivering expanded shared services across the government, where GSA is being really asked to step up and take a leadership role right now.
All right. So, I wanted to talk about the first strategic priority, which is the real estate portfolio. And where I want to go with that is, would you elaborate on some of the initiatives you're pursuing to save taxpayer money? And more importantly, what are you doing to optimize owned and leased real estate while you're effectively disposing of real estate?
So within the real estate portfolio, I think we've got 3 initiatives I'm excited about. The first one is let's use less real estate, whether it be leased or owned. Let's shrink our footprint. And in doing so, we can deliver some real savings. As I said, at GSA, we've gone to about 140 square feet per person. We're trying to help the government overall get down to about 180 square feet per person. And in doing so, we're finding that we can actually increase collaboration, so we can make it a better workspace. The second one is taking better care of the of the space we have. When we neglect minor repairs, they turn into major repairs. When we neglect major repairs, they turn into leased buildings. So making sure that we take the appropriations we have, and with Congress's permission, we invest those in making sure that federal buildings continue to meet the needs of the federal workforce today and tomorrow and long into the future. The GSA headquarters is a great example of it. It's a building that is now 101 years old, and it's actually now accommodates 3,300 employees, which is the largest number of employees it's ever had. The third principle, though, is disposing of real estate that we no longer need, and making sure that we take assets that are no longer performing and we move them off the books. And actually, let me add a fourth principle in there also, which is smarter leases. And I have to give credit to Dan Matthews, who's the PBS commissioner, and the team in PBS. They have done amazing work on smarter leases. So for the half the portfolio we lease, when I came into GSA, I learned that the average tenancy in a federal building is 21 years, or lease space. Our average lease is 6 years. Dan has been focusing, and PBS, the Public Building Service, have really been focusing on taking expiring leases and looking at the top 20% where we can get the greatest amount of savings, and putting our resources there so that we can get longer-term leases where we get better deals, we get better space, and we can better use the workforce we have. And he's already managed to save taxpayers about $200 million this year so far.
So switching gears a little bit, the government spends nearly $80 billion a year on IT. 70% of that is spent on O&M work of existing systems. Would you tell us more about GSA's role working to retire and replace some of these old IT systems that maybe pose security risks or are not cost effective?
So I think you're right. The government spends a lot of money on IT, specifically on operations and maintenance contracts. So GSA has been focusing on helping agencies buy the right solutions. In many cases, it means we're helping them buy a solution as a service. Mm-hmm. So instead of investing in the next legacy system, we're working with the private sector to really adopt the best practices and frankly transition the cost of maintaining those systems to the private sector. So buying it as a service. It's also allowing us to return value to taxpayers through better investments. The Technology Modernization Fund and the work that's being done through the Centers of Excellence are great examples of where GSA has been able to partner with other agencies, go in, target some investments where we think there's going to be a fast return on those dollars, and we're going to have savings that we can demonstrate through better technology and better security.
So I understand that GSA is leading the way in bringing the modern online buying experience to the federal buyer through the creation of an eCommerce portal. Would you tell us what you're doing in this effort? What has Congress required you folks to take the lead on? Where are you now?
So I'm really excited about this opportunity. Congress has directed GSA to work to put in place contracts with commercial portal providers in the hopes it will allow us to let the federal government buy true commercial off-the-shelf type of items faster, have a better buying experience, reduce workforce demands, really have just a better overall customer experience. Right now, GSA is looking at the entire process. So what are the various commercial models that exist? We're asking a lot of questions, and we're doing a lot of listening. We've done multiple sessions with the public, with our current vendor community, and with the portal providers to find out what, a lot of it is what don't we know, and what will work and what won't work. But really, I think it comes down to we're trying to create a search process and an ordering process that's easier, that lets agencies buy the solution they need, that uses dynamic pricing so that we get real-time price competition and savings for taxpayers, and streamlines the entire process so that it's not a burden on the agency workforce, whether it be GSA or customer agencies, that they can have. We've got a limited number of acquisition professionals across the government. Mm-hmm. We want them doing high-value work. Mm-hmm. So if we can use a commercial solution and have some low-value work done through a commercial solution, I think it's a great win for taxpayers.
That's great. I understand that GSA is the lead on the President Management Agenda cross-agency priority goal of sharing quality services. Would you tell us about your efforts getting the GSA enterprise to identify ways it can better support shared services across the government?
So when we look at shared services right now in the government, administrative services, the government is spending about $28.6 billion a year on administrative services. Yet over half of federal executives are unhappy with the level of service they're getting. So the challenge I've been given is not just save money, so a goal of saving about $2 billion over the next 10 years, but also thrill that workforce. Come back with something that's going to be better for the federal executive, better for that federal employee, and lets them do their job. That means that GSA needs to really work collaboratively with other agencies. Make sure we understand their requirements, we understand the policies that drive those requirements, and that we look to find common solutions. Now, I think that there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution across government, but there's going to be a one-size-fits-most. And when we can find that one-size-fits-most solution, GSA can then work with other agencies to figure out what agency is best equipped to provide that service, because it's not always going to be GSA, and what the best way to address that need is going to be, whether it's using the federal workforce or leveraging that workforce with some contractor resources as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised when I was doing research for this that GSA helps partner federal agencies, customer federal agencies acquire almost $50 billion worth of goods and services from like 20,000 industry partners. Where I'm going with this is, what are you doing around the transformation of the multiple award schedules, and how are you making it a better experience, streamlining it for agencies?
So I want to establish GSA as the premier provider of efficient and effective acquisition solutions across the government. And right now, I'm continuing to evaluate and improve the federal procurement process. I'd say in primarily three ways when I look at the schedules program. First of all, I want to reduce barriers to entry. I want to make sure that we can bring the right commercial solutions to the federal government. And we can do that by reducing the number of times that any vendor or supplier has to talk to the government, provide the same information, how many different people they have to provide that information to, or making sure that our processes aren't forcing them to deal with scenarios that are so far outside the norm of commercial contracting that it just isn't worth it for them. I'd say the second way I'm looking to reduce it is barriers to access, and that's really looking at our customer agencies. I want to make sure that our contracts aren't keeping our customers from finding the solution they want or forcing them to cobble it together with a bit from a contract here and a bit from a contract there. I want them to be able to come to GSA with the requirement they have, and our contracts should be flexible enough to adopt and adapt to those needs and really find them a solution there. And then I think the third one is I really want to address our systems issues. Our old systems are currently driving us to do business in order to feed those outdated systems, rather than letting our business systems drive the business processes we want and that we think are the most desirable. So making it easier for our customers to find items on our schedules, for example. So I really asked the Federal Acquisition Service and Alan Thomas, the commissioner, there's been a wonderful partner, to please, to not be afraid to reimagine and redesign our acquisition system, especially within the schedules program and as we're looking to the future of the Federal Acquisition Service.
Be sure to join me next time on the Business of Government Hour TV for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government and its effectiveness. Until then, it's businessofgovernment.org.